On this presentation, I'm going to give you a quick overview of a paper that me and my team recently published on Archive. It's about TokenLab. For those of you who don't know, TokenLab is a package I've personally created for agent-based modeling. It's a package that's meant to be used for token economies. You can simulate price dynamics and all sorts of things, some of which we're going to cover in this presentation. And one of my students at University College London used TokenLab to study speculative behavior in token economies. So that's a great example of some of the things that you can do with TokenLab. Well, also this study gives us some very interesting insights into the nature of cryptocurrency valuations and speculations. So let's start with some preliminaries. We have utility tokens, security tokens, and cryptocurrencies. In our research, we mostly focused on utility tokens. So cryptocurrencies are things like Bitcoin. They don't really have any utility other than a store of wealth. And now most tokens are utility tokens, with security tokens being a close second. The thing with security tokens being that they securitize things like, let's say, real world assets or assets of all kinds. And hence, they usually have their own niche, whereas most of the major blockchains, most of the major crypto projects, they really have utility tokens. So TokenLab allows you to simulate all different types of tokens, but for the purposes of this research, we focused more on utility tokens. So there are a few different valuation methods, and this is where things get a bit heated because there's no, let's say, objective way to value different cryptocurrencies. So like a method that we've borrowed from more traditional, let's say, financial theory is the income approach that uses things like the discounted cash flow analysis to assess future cash flows. Then we have the network model, which, to be honest with you, it's an interesting idea, but it's not as easy to apply in cryptocurrencies, even though some people have tried. And finally, we have the quantitative theory of money, which, while it has its imperfections, still remains, to a large extent, the most popular theory for valuing cryptocurrencies. In terms of how the quantitative theory of money works in crypto, it's essentially an equation used in macroeconomics, and with a few small adaptations, you can use this in crypto. It's a tautology, that is, you have two sides of an equation, and once you break it down, you're like, yeah, obviously A should equal B. But the key is that if you're using this to study projects, the pre-launch stage, you can come up with some assumptions of things like the expected transaction volume or the holding time, and then you can come up with some estimates as to why this around the valuation of those projects. I've done a lot of work on the equation of exchange. I also created an improved version in another paper. And it's also one of the models we're using in TokenLab to estimate the fair value of a token given a set of assumptions. And now let's move on to TokenLab. So TokenLab is an agent-based modeling tokenomics simulation library. It's open source. You can find it on GitHub. I've developed this myself. If you have any questions, just drop me a message or any feature requests, and I'll be very happy to help you out. And the core idea behind TokenLab is to provide a very good balance between flexibility and ease of use. So TokenLab is primarily built to allow you to simulate different price dynamics and valuation scenarios, while at the same time making it quite simple so that within a few lines of code you can simulate most of the important things about the token economy. So the research that was recently published on Archive, the question it tried to answer was, how can you model speculative behavior and what can we learn from that? So we broke the problem down in a few different stages. So first of all, we had the supply adjustments, then the threshold tracking, the supply manipulation, and the speculative trading allocation. So the way the system works is that there are some, let's say, basic token economy dynamics, and then there's some pools of agents, like the speculators, that they decide to make certain decisions in terms of buying or selling, depending by tracking the price dynamics as well as the price itself. So this essentially increases the complexity of the price dynamics because these agents, they remove tokens from circulation or they add tokens in the circulation. And by creating these different speculation types, we can see how the price dynamics are affected. So this might sound a bit too complicated, but you're going to see why we did this in a second. So we studied Chainlink. Chainlink is one of the biggest crypto projects. It's an oracle. It's a data broker as well, provides data to decentralized projects. And we studied the token, the price dynamics of the Link token from January 2020 all the way to July 2024. The transaction data was sourced from CoinGecko, and we ran multiple simulations, 30 iterations of that simulation multiple times in order to ensure statistical reliability. So we used historical data, and what we found, we also used different speculator archetypes. So going back to the way the speculators were designed, we decided to have 5 different types where they trade by using different styles, different take profit thresholds, different stop loss thresholds. And again, all these are behaviors that you can also observe in real crypto markets. And the final results were quite intriguing. In the next slide, I'm going to show you the full graph. But what we saw was that the simulations without the speculator consistently produced prices that were significantly below the actual market prices. So high proportions of speculative trading correlate with elevated price levels, even with identical buy-sell strategies. And you can see this here. So that's quite a long slide. So essentially what this means is the following. So TokenLab is using a pricing model in order to understand, in order to produce what is a fair value for a token, okay? And we added this element on top of the valuation that is taking into account speculators, and we have these different speculative behaviors. And what you observed is that the behavior of the speculators actually gets the token price closer to the real price, okay, which is very, very interesting. And essentially what this tells us is that, first of all, it verifies what we knew, that many of the cryptocurrencies out there, I mean, Link being one example, in the full research, we studied a few other cryptocurrencies as well. They always traded multiples during a bull run, and these multiples are to a large extent driven by this type of behavior, okay, which is fascinating because again and again we see these pump and dump dynamics in the crypto markets. And even if some of the projects, or I'd like to think most of the projects, they're not necessarily scams and they don't intend for this behavior to happen, it still does happen. Okay? And this research explains why. And it even allows us to understand how the different speculative behaviors, they converge together in order to create this outcome. So that was a very interesting finding for us, and you can read more about this in the paper we published. We also analyzed the market phases, and we saw that certain market phases, such as upward, downward, they seem to, each one of them, they're best matched with certain mixes of speculator types, right? And again, this also follows common sense. So we know that during a massive rally, the behavior of the crowd is different during a bear market. And we expect, for example, that some of the people that sell at the bottom of the market, they're driven by fear. The people that are buying, they're driven either, because they're believers in the project, or, delusional in some cases, but quite often they're like professional traders that they have better models and they can afford to wait. And all these obviously represent different appetites to risk, as well as different levels of sophistication, which leads to this behavior. Again, fascinating results. And what are the key findings and implications? First of all, different market phases attract distinct speculator archetypes, which influence the price. There were some enhancements we did in TokenLab also as part of this research, which will allow you to experiment with your own dynamics, right? And to either study existing projects or to run simulations for new and up-and-coming projects. Let's say maybe you are running, maybe you're thinking of launching your own project. You need to run some simulations to better understand how to adapt some of the parameters. And the key practical application is that, I guess, the end result of this research is that now we have at our disposal a better understanding of valuations, as well as how to improve valuations of existing projects during a bull run and a bear market. Obviously, the real dynamics around token projects and tokenomics, the way they're very complicated, and this study only captures part of the whole picture, but I still believe it's a step in the right direction in terms of establishing tokenomics as a serious field of study. So in terms of future research directions, and these are some of the things that we are going to work on next, and if you're interested in collaborating on some of those things with us, just let us know. First of all, we'd like to integrate more complex strategy combinations. We'd like to adapt speculator proportions to market conditions, and also incorporate external events, let's say, such as news stories. Something which I also find very interesting would be to understand what are the different mixes of speculators that can lead to particular behavior. So we can use this process, let's say, against price dynamics and say, yeah, it looks like, this is the kind of speculator mix that maybe is taking place at the Link token. and there's another speculator mix for Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. So in any case, I hope all this made sense. I understand, it's quite a lot to absorb. There's a paper in the description. There's a link to the paper in the description below. So just make sure to go there and read it. And if you have any questions, just feel free to shoot me an email. So thank you very much, and I hope